start this way because I've got to zip through my entire career because we don't have a lot of time. So who here was ever told when they were in college, like, don't major in that or don't study that because you'll never get a job? Okay, so that was my story. I did not major in art history, but I loved art history, and I've spent my entire career in it. So I'm going to zip through it as fast as I can to kind of set you up for how I got to where I am today. Okay, so my first job, I talked this guy, Gary Snyder, into hiring me. He had just inherited the Princeton Gallery of Fine Art from his parents. He was representing very established artists. So this is the primary market. These are artists who are still alive. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., got a job at the National Gallery of Art, where I was able to learn about the condition of paintings. Was the secretary in the conservation department. They taught me everything I needed to know about condition, about how to spot fakes, about how to tell what the value of something would be based on how well it was doing in its history. Okay, and then what I really wanted to do is I wanted to work in 19th and early 20th century American paintings, and so I talked this guy behind the desk who looks like he's about 12 years old. That was my boss, Hollis Taggart. He became my mentor. He hired me. I was his very first employee. You can see on the right, we eventually had a bigger staff. But yeah, that's me with the red hair looking very young. But he was my mentor. He taught me everything I needed to know about running an art gallery, dealing in historical art. He took me to New York. He took me to art fairs. He used to take me to the auctions twice a year at Sotheby's and Christie's. And what he did for me that was so valuable was that he always asked my opinion in front of other dealers. Like, what did I think about this? Did I think we should buy it? What did I think it was going to go for at auction? And by doing that, he set me up for the rest of my career. So then his dream was to move his gallery to New York. So he did that. And so I decided to finally get a master's degree in art history, and that's what I did. And then I published 2 novels. The one on the left, by the way, is about the artist William Lane Thicknell, who I became the leading expert on. And then I moved to Tucson, and I opened my own gallery. And this gallery specialized in mid-century modernism, American modernism. So we had both primary and secondary market exhibitions. It's just a nice picture I like of my gallery. And then this was the Works on Paper Fair. Because Hollis had set me up so well, I was already well known in the art world, and so I was able to get into very prestigious art fairs. This is the Works on Paper Fair. Shout out to Kristlyn. Where is she? Okay, that's right. This is the Works on Paper Fair in London at the Royal Academy. So I had this brilliant 5-year plan for my gallery, and everything was going swimmingly until the recession of 2008 and 9. And so then the gallery was really in desperate need of an influx of cash. So I got incredibly lucky again. And because of the recession, the University of Arizona Museum of Art had a huge budget cut, which gave the current director the opportunity to fire the curator he never got along with. And then he brought me on for about half the price, but it's okay, it was all good. And I got to be the curator at the museum I was there for about 4 years until that director, very appropriately, was let go. And they hired, unfortunately, the interim director. They decided the head of the School of Art should be the interim director. So this is a guy who was graduating PhDs. So he was not happy about the fact that I only had a master's degree, and he thought I should go. So I decided to publish my 3rd novel. Shout out to Julie Bonner. Woohoo! Julie helped me design it. So grateful. Okay. And then these people, in the meantime, Len and Doris Koris, were in the background setting up the Healing Art Program at Tucson Medical Center, and they wanted to bring art into the hospital. The hospital, I'm sure you've heard this, it has 8 miles of hallway. And if you can imagine, every single mile of those hallways with either blank walls or like a picture about this big, right, in the middle of a 20-foot wall. Like, it was pretty pathetic. And so luckily, the foundation got behind this because this is a completely donor-funded program, just so you know, if you ever stay there and get a huge bill, none of that money is going to this program, so don't worry about it. And Len knew me from my gallery days and the museum days, and he really, really, really pushed to get me hired there, so they hired me. And so this is our official mission, which I won't really waste any moments on. But basically the idea is that we're interested in how art, all of the arts, can enhance the patient, the visitor, the staff experience. Let me just show you real quick some of the art in the hospital. It's just to show you we do this. Oh, and one other thing, we also have live musicians. This was something I really formalized. We had a few before I started, but now on an ongoing basis, we have anywhere between 7 and 9 live musicians who play for patients in the hallways. It's really fantastic, okay? And they're paid, by the way, they are paid, okay? So anyway, I had heard about this thing called visual thinking strategies and how it was starting to be used in healthcare. So TMC is kind of unique in that they have a mentorship program for first-year nurse grads, which means that they get 8 weeks in an actual classroom before they start out on the units. So it's a really unique opportunity to do something like VTS. So, all right, what is it? What is visual thinking strategies? It's an art curriculum and facilitation method that increases observation skill, improves communication, fosters collaboration, and increases comfort with ambiguity. And so I was incredibly lucky because M. Miller, who's in the audience, is one of the members or like staff members of ETS, which used to be based in Brooklyn. And she happened to be living in Tucson. And so I was able, along with a couple other people, to get trained directly with her, which was amazing. And so you may be wondering, like, did I invent this? No, not at all. Okay, this is all the famous places where it's used in medicine, both nationally and internationally, and there's many, many more. I just put the most prestigious ones up there because I thought it was cool. Okay. These are the people who founded it, and this is why. So if you're a child and you go to an art museum that looks like this, right, and you don't know anything about Greek mythology, maybe you have only the vaguest notion of Bible stories, maybe you know nothing about history. What in the world are you going to get out of this, right? Well, VTS is a way for you to get something out of it, and this is how it works. It's only 3 questions. What's going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? And then magically, if you do this in a group with children or with adults, or with pretty much anybody who has voluntarily gone to see art, remember that word, you will have all these fantastic things happen for you. So let me just say one thing, because I think the first 3, you can see how, and I'm going to use the word critical, I'm going to get it in here, you can see how that would be really important in critical care, right? You want the people who are taking care of you to be good observationalists and have good communication and collaborate with each other. But the thing about ambiguity is the one that's kind of trips people up a little bit. So let me just say a word about ambiguity in a healthcare setting. So most of the people who spend more than 1 night or a couple of hours in a hospital have to stay because there is something ambiguous, meaning we don't know what the hell's going on with their situation. So, maybe they have multiple symptoms and they don't all seem to be related to the same thing and it's very confusing, or maybe they're not responding to medicine, or something is ambiguous, and you really want the nurse, who is the person you're going to see way more than the doctor, to be comfortable with that level of discomfort. You want them to just walk in the room, and if you have a whole ton of questions and they don't know the answer, you don't want them to clam up and run out of the room. You want them to be able to just be like, yes, all of this is very confusing. Don't worry, we're going to get to the bottom of it. So, this is an example of ambiguity in art. So if you look at this painting, which is one of the ones we use, you will see immediately that while you can see a whole bunch of things you recognize, you can't tell what the hell is happening, right? Like, what is this? I mean, you've got this weird rock in the center. You have this woman that may or may not be praying to it or beseeching it. You've got this building that may be coming down on the right side. You've got this building on the left side that may be going up. But if you look really closely, and I don't think this is going to work, this isn't going to work, in the lower right-hand corner, there is a Coca-Cola sign. okay? So just when you're starting to think, well, this is like some, just random, like mythical, thing, like it's clearly based in the 20th century. So like, what does that mean? Who knows? Okay. So when I decided that I wanted to bring this to the nurses, I was really helped by Erica Murphy, who was the manager of the New Nurse Grad Program, and my friend Jacqueline Feller, who's a retired nurse practitioner and educator and a great art lover. And frankly, I couldn't have done this program with the nurses without either of them. Erica, because she fully supported it and set it off on the right way. And then Jacqueline, because we move in this process from artworks to photography to clinical photos. And obviously, I'm not trained to know anything that's going on with the clinical photos, so she takes over the last session, and she spends the first 3 sessions kind of observing and gives me notes at the end, so I know what's going on. So I want to tell you that the very first time that we did this, it did not go very well, because I thought it would work like the magic of ETS in a museum. You would just take this group of people and you would do this exercise and they'd all magically get all these wonderful skills out of it. And they were confused, they didn't like it, they hated the fact that we didn't tell them what was actually going on in the picture if we knew. And so we had to adjust. And so we adjusted in a couple of ways. And the most important way we adjusted was we made sure they knew right from the very beginning, this is why we're going to do this exercise. It doesn't matter that you don't know what's actually going on in the picture. None of that matters. We're just going to have fun, just relax. There's no grade, there's no right or wrong answer. Just enjoy. And Erica would set it up every time by putting this slide up. The most important practical lesson that can be given to nurses is to teach them what to observe, by Florence Nightingale. So she set me up for success. Okay, so if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or something to write on, anything to write on, just whip it out real quick. Because the way I start it for the nurses is slightly different than the way you would do it in a museum. In fact, what I'm about to do, they don't do in a museum. But we found that this was a really valuable thing. So what I'm going to do is when I hit the next slide, you're going to have exactly a minute to look at the picture and write down everything you see. Just write for a minute. Okay. Okay. All right, everybody stop. Okay, who was able to take notes? Raise your hand if you're able to take notes. Okay, I'm just going to randomly keep them up because I won't remember. Okay, Cheryl, what was the very first thing you saw?
Woman.
Woman, okay.
The number 7.
The number 7?
The stained glass window.
Okay, yeah.
Harmonica.
Okay.
The red cloth she's holding.
Okay. Somebody else, in the back. Woman? Anybody else? Yes.
Playing cards.
Playing cards. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there, and you can see. So all of you looked at the exact same thing, and all of you, the first thing you wanted to write down was pretty much different. Whoops. And that's exactly what happens in the classroom. And so it's really great. It sets everybody up for this idea that, oh, we don't all see the same thing when we walk into the room. Okay. Super important. All right. So now we're going to play. All right. Everybody ready? Okay. Very straightforward. Somebody raise their hand and tell me what's going on in this picture.
I'm thinking that it's sort of sadness. Like she seems like she's sad and thinking about something, and maybe because she can't be part of what's going on outside, but she's just looking sort of distant and going through the motions of routine, but in a sad way.
Okay, so just dig down a little. So what do you see that makes you think she's sad?
Her face is down and her eyes are down, and her position just seems like she's not joyful or in a good place. There's no celebration there.
Okay. All right. So we've got a woman whose body position might mean she's sad. Yes.
She has a little veil on her head, and then the Gothic arch, like church in the background. So maybe there's something to do with the wedding.
Okay. So we're noticing the church in the background, the veil on her head, and thinking maybe this has something to do with marriage, something to do with their relationship or something. Okay. Yes.
I was almost sensing like the South, like New Orleans, where there's like a little bit of like tarot with the cards. She's at the intersection with the kind of Catholic veil, but then there's like the church that he's standing between. So I was sensing like a sort of witchy versus Catholic vibe.
Okay, so you're noticing the cards, which may be tarot cards, and kind of pulling that all together and thinking maybe this is like some, there's some tension between the mystical side and the religious side or something like that. You can see, though, that we don't know. We've done all this work, right, and we've looked at a lot of things, and we still don't know really what's going on in the picture. And I will tell you a secret about art that art historians know that I think the general public sometimes just doesn't really understand. Artists sometimes don't know what the picture was about. Artists are notorious for lying about what the picture is about. There's a very famous double portrait, for example, of Frida Kahlo, and she swore for years that this was a picture of her and her imaginary childhood friend. And then finally, after like a couple of years, she admitted it was her happy self, and it was her depressed self. So, there's that. Okay, all right, so just real quick, we're just gonna zip through some of the other pictures that we use so you can see them and you can kind of see how we make the transition. So this one is another one that we use. Nurses love this one. There's a lot of cool death and destruction and stuff. Another one, and then we move on to photographs. We start with photographs that are kind of like, what the hell is happening? Then we move on to photographs where you're talking about family dynamics. Then we move on to photographs designed to kind of start to pull out empathy. And then in the last session, we do 3 clinical photos. And if you want to know more about it, it's vtshome.org. And okay, thank you. Yeah.